Went to Riders in the Field in October. Twyla Beth and Sara didn't combine forces then, but I went to one of each and hit them both a couple of times, and I'm sitting there going, will y'all please come to Amarillo? And they both went, yes, can we do something together? Yeah! So, and it was about at that pitch. If you can imagine, me just sitting there in October about to do this. So, I first sort of, oddly enough, because Facebook Memories tells you things, my first ever big convention ever was DFW Con in 19. And I have a picture of me and Sara, both in yellow, at the Friday night cocktail party sort of mosh pit of attack an agent thing. And I was like, it pops up in your memories and you're going, that's me and Sara. We've been friends a long time, according to, the rules of social media. So, and I don't think I actually met Twyla Beth that week, but I knew who she was through our good friend Jody, who has been here several times. So
Jody's very fond of knowing.
Yes, she is. Yes. I'm not going to jump through all of y'all's bona fides, but let me tell you, they've got them. Twyla Beth has been with Fox Press since 17, big-time editor, but I love her editing philosophy. It's important to know the rules. It's more important to know when and how to break them to give your readers the best adventure possible. So as an editor, she's not looking to change how you speak. She just wants you to do it really great. And Sara, I love that, lives in the wilds of North Texas. And one of the reasons Sara's such a good fit is we've had y'all's response was more fantasy. You've had a lot of romance, you've had a lot of thrillers, more fantasy, and that's what Sara writes. And so she knows what she's doing. So she's never met a chupacabra or a werewolf, as far as she knows. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys get started on.
I see a chupacabra outing.
All right, so you met us. We want to help you, and I'm standing on the wrong side. We want to help you guys write books that are richer and deeper and that readers just don't want to put down. Have you ever had a book that you're like, I don't even care that my alarm is going off in the morning, I must finish this? That's the best, right? Until morning.
And have you had books where the concept was so cool and you were so excited and then it was just flat? And you were like, there was so much and
What potential!
And you couldn't figure out why it didn't work.
So we're hoping that we can help you find both of those things so that you can have what you want and not what you don't in your own work, whether you're writing short stories, novels, illustrations, whatever you're doing. So,
whatever you want.
okay, so why these two topics together? You need both, and that's one of the reasons some things fall flat, is they've got maybe a really great world that they've really built out some great fantastical place, but the characters all look the same. They feel the same. Nobody's an individual. Or they're just really thin and you just want to love them and you just can't. And those are those books that you DNF and you don't even know why. It was probably one of those things, that either the world was too bland or not rich enough, or the characters fell flat. And they need to be interwoven. So you can do both great, but if they don't interact properly, you'll end up breaking your story.
And what was funny was when we were doing this, we were teaching classes, we're friends, and we've been friends for a while, but we didn't talk about our classes. And so I taught, and then she taught, and they were like this. Because, and I taught on world building, and she taught on characters, because they're that important. Those are the two most important.
So as I was teaching, I was like, if you were here in the last one, you remember what she said? Well, let's talk about that now. and how that applies to character. It was very, very cool. It's like Jody knew. She maybe did, but she's not going to
She
tell
had
us.
brain cells, it's fine.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about who you are. So I heard we have a lot of fantasy. Who's fantasy?
Science fiction? Both.
Horror? Mystery? Like what kind of mystery? Thrillers?
Cozy.
Cozies?
Murder.
Murder? Procedurals? What else we got in the room?
Nonfiction?
Westerns. Fun.
Memoirs?
Westerns. We got memoir? Okay.
All of this applies even to nonfiction and memoirs.
Pardon? Children's books? Even for children. Children are really great at noticing things that you don't think they notice. You know how I know that? Because when my twins began speaking, they began using words that I hadn't used. They were seasonal words. Not bad words, they were seasonal words, but that season hadn't happened since they were months, counted their age in months. And they had picked up that word, learned how to use it in context, and were using it now that the season was back. Wow. So, you know, they also used bad words. I didn't know that they were listening.
I taught my nephew the S word the other day.
Oh, good. Super.
Great.
Proud moment.
I'm the best aunt ever.
Proud moment. So they pay attention and they're aware of things that we don't give them enough credit. And so if you can help write a richer book for a child, that's where you get classics. That's where you get, read this to me again every single night for 3 years.
Graphic novels? Anybody writing, reading? Games? Anybody?
Reading. Yeah.
Reading. Games? Game writer? Game? Okay.
I'm
What
writing
about artists?
I'm writing a musical.
Oh, fun.
There you go. Artists? Very cool. This is going to apply, a lot of this going to apply too, because if you don't have, I mean, I don't know, I'm really into like anime and Chinese dramas and all that, and so if you have a flat sketch of a character, you can't even tell who that is. And so it's very frustrating.
Who's heard about a book and it sounded great, and then you saw the book cover and you're like, oh.
That's not the author's fault.
That's the illustrator's fault.
Well, that's the
Maybe.
publisher's fault.
Well, maybe,
Yeah.
unless it was self-published. But
Yes.
whatever, that can be that illustration not adequately pulling out the life of the character and the world.
Yeah.
Or it misrepresents.
Okay, so where are you in your author's journey? Are you guys newbies, professionals?
But Harry told me that he had books out.
Yes. Newbie?
I'm a newbie, but I did a children's book, so.
Oh, wonderful.
Very cool.
I have a great illustrator.
We have an award-winning author on the front row.
Yes. That's nothing to sneeze about.
Okay, so talk to me. Oh, yes, sir?
I'm an award-winning author also.
Fantastic.
I'm working on book number 43.
That's amazing. There you go. So when it's time, you just come right up and teach alongside us. Okay, so do we have independent or traditional routes
Hybrid.
or
Hybrid.
Independent? Okay.
Traditional.
Sorry?
Traditional.
Traditional, great. Okay, those are all fun journeys, not really relevant to our conversation, but it's good for me to know. I like to know. I'm nosy.
That's good for us to know, because it's yeah.
Okay, and then does anybody have like a particularly strong thing they were like, oh, I hope they talk about this? Because if you'll tell us, we'll try really hard to make sure we do.
Young adult fiction,
Young adult fiction,
kind of romance,
okay?
history.
I edit that space a lot. Great. Anybody else have a particular topic or thing that you were hoping, or something that you loved, and why do we love it? Yes, sir.
As a poet, I need character development. in
Very few words.
words.
We
Okay,
got you.
we got you.
What about you? Come on now. I'm gonna call on you. I see your face. What's going on?
Like thrillers, maybe?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
we can talk about that.
I'm sorry, I just shoved it down into my mouth. I'm pretty good at dialogue and making unique characters,
Uh-huh.
but I'm often told that we don't know where we are. I
You
forget
have white
this.
room syndrome.
Yep. Yep.
I assume everybody
Fixable.
leaves the room.
You won't have that next time you sit down with your work in
Or see
progress.
Well, you will, I have white room syndrome.
I mean, you will, but you'll know how to address it.
Yeah.
This is something I've found in a lot of books I've read in the last few years, that the writer doesn't tell me who is speaking, and the writer's voice, like both characters
Sound the
have
same?
the same voice. And I find myself
Do you have to go
back
do
the
math?
beginning and,
Count
every other,
Yeah.
because I can't tell if it's the husband or the wife.
Well, in fairness, sometimes husbands and wives after a while do kind of share brain.
But
But they shouldn't sound exactly
But
the
it's
same.
because it's not real life.
Yeah.
I need the writer, like, it could be excellent. I'm really enthralled, but I just don't know if that's the husband saying that or the wife saying that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about how you can cue that better. So first of all, you need to understand as the writer who those people are, and they are individuals to you, and then we'll help you learn how you can cue them. We're going to talk about the cueing part in the afternoon. I hope you guys can all stay the whole day. We're going to talk some, and then we're going to do some stuff, and then we're going to talk some, and then we're going to go to lunch. We're going to talk some, and we're going to do some stuff. So this is audience participation, so I hope you came ready to do more than take notes. You have paper, some blank paper on your tables. If we have a little bit more, if you didn't bring a notebook to take notes in, that's there for you.
Did you have something real quick?
Yes.
Yes.
Kind of like how she said with the dialogue, except I don't know when to tone back on the dialogue and, do more with like the surroundings. But then I'm afraid that I'll forget about the dialogue and do too much
Got
of the surroundings. If that makes sense.
It's a balance. It's hard.
It's a balance, and I'll tell you first off the bat, don't worry about that when you're drafting. That's something that you address when you go back and you're editing. And you find those spots and you read it out loud and hear where is dialogue kind of droning on and I don't really know what's happening in the room, how are people responding to that. And you find those things later, but the first thing is don't have filters, just get the story out there.
Well, and one of our, I don't know, I think this, we're going to say it in a minute, but I just want to kind of get it in the mindset in there early. The mindset you want in this type of thing is pulling your stuff apart and reordering it, moving it around, not getting attached to it, too attached to it that you can't do that. So you write a scene, there's like blocks of dialogue, blocks of description, blocks of everything. You go back and you tear it apart and you Frankenstein it back together, only the important stuff.
Crazy quilt.
Yeah. And so, but people get really attached to it because you worked on it for like 3 or 4 hours, whatever long it takes. And you can't get attached. You
Can't get
kill your
attached.
darlings.
It's about the reader's journey, but we're going to talk about killing your darlings
Yes.
this afternoon.
Sorry.
I wouldn't have any idea how that happens.
Okay, so when you first begin creating a new character, what's the first thing that you think about as you're kind of picturing that character? Yes, ma'am.
I would say if they're going to be like old, young, or male or female.
Okay, some basic physical traits. What else?
The audience, who am I writing for?
Oh, who are you writing for? Okay, that's a great thought. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I
Summer.
tend to think about what kind of attitude they're going to have when interacting with
Okay, are they sassy? Are they grumpy? Your attitude, great. We're going to talk about different levels. So these superficial things is what color hair they have, and they're female, and that's superficial. Then we're going to talk about some richer and some deeper things that you can look at.
I was saying tall, but yeah.
Oh, tall.
Yes.
I don't know about that. I don't experience that personally. I had to marry tall to get tall. All right, so some superficial things, and feel free to just shout out. I don't have any problem with you talking over me, and I also don't have any problem with you asking me a question in the moment. This is not a wait till your mother gets home, wait till your father gets home thing later. Let's talk about it in the moment, because we're talking about so much that if we hold questions till the end, that'll be weird.
Well, and I'm going to be honest, I have ADHD. Shout it out. I won't remember what we were talking about 2 hours from now.
So let's
say
just,
then,
let's
the
just do
only
it.
thing
Yes,
we
ma'am.
ask,
Did you raise your hand?
the only thing we ask is that you say your work-specific questions
Yes.
for like
Lunch
lunchtime
or
or
dinner.
afterwards. We'll hang out with you guys if you have something specific about your own work
Work
in
in
progress. Save that so that we can have more value for the whole group.
Great.
I have a question then.
Yes, sir, Mike.
In books, I've seen characters described in detail, and
Mhm.
some other books, not so much detail, and I don't know that I have a preference. Do you have a preference?
That is dependent on a lot of things. Not describing them very much can work. I like physical description.
Right.
It can work if you have given your readers at least something to grab onto to relate to. And then some of the other things you can choose to leave to reader imagination, but there are going to be things that you need. So where I would fall is in between. You need to give enough about your character A versus character 77, and I did that on purpose, so that they could tell them apart. And so, and some of those characteristics are going to be really important to the story that you're telling, and others will just be points of interest, differentiators.
The other thing is it's genre specific.
Yes.
So if I'm writing aliens, I got to talk a little bit more about aliens.
Because I don't know what they look like. I've never been there.
But if I'm writing elves, please don't describe an elf to me in great detail from top to bottom. If they look exactly like Lord of the Rings, just tell me elf and move on.
Yeah.
But if you're writing romance, the first time the guy walks into the room, you're gonna want to know what
We're
we're
talking about a
like.
meet cute. Why in the world did he grab your attention?
Right. So it's gonna be genre specific, but also how much do you trust your readers? So you're gonna have, like in YA, you're gonna have a little bit more description than in like adult epic fantasy, typically. But it just depends on how much you trust your readers, what you're trying to accomplish. But me personally, I have white ribbon syndrome. I try and make sure that everything that I describe has something to do with characterization to say who that person is, not just that they have blue eyes.
Right. Who are they and why are they here in this particular story? In this particular...
Or like, who are they as a person?
Who are they as a person and why do I care?
So,
yeah. So, physical descriptions, jobs, what they do, what their hobbies are, and hard skills, soft skills, specialized training. Those are all really superficial things that can be really important. And when I say superficial, I don't mean unimportant. I mean those are things that you can see. When you're looking at someone and interacting with them, you see those, and they're easy to notice. And a lot of times I find that authors, particularly new authors, focus here a lot and don't necessarily get to the next layers. And so that's what I want to help you make sure that you don't miss. So when you're talking about how can I tell characters one from another in dialogue, speech patterns is one of those ways. So if you have someone who is from South Carolina interacting with someone from Canada, interacting with someone from her planet, they're not going to sound the same. The words that they choose, the phrasings that they use, the body language that they use to surround those verbal words, or maybe it'll only be body language, that's part of their speech pattern that is part of their personhood. And so you want to think about that, and that is a really great way to help create individuals that feel real.
can I throw something in real quick?
No.
No, never. So I have fallen into K-pop. I love BTS. It's really a problem. There is a linguist on YouTube that is doing a series. He speaks Korean, but he's American, where he analyzes each member's speech patterns. because they're from different parts of Korea. And so he talks about, and he analyzes them in terms of their personalities. So there's one, one of them has an IQ of 148. And so I don't ask me why I know that. Anyways, moving on.
Fun facts with Sarah.
Fun facts with BTS. So when he speaks, unless he's putting on a persona as a rap star, right? He has these long sentences with like these more formal language. And so if you can find that kind of thing, and if you want links to that one, if you don't care about that it's about BTS, we can totally do that. Where you just have different, like shorter sentences, more direct, more flowery. You don't have to do accents,
Right.
written accents in your.
No.
They're kind of annoying unless it's like, what is it? Redwall.
Redwall.
Redwall
is actually
cute.
annoying in Redwall too.
It's annoying, but it's cute.
But it's excessive.
Yes.
So we can talk about that. But yes, so speech pattern can be a lot more than just, do they say a cutesy colloquialism?
But there's tons of resources online too. We're going to talk about it here, but you find them in weird places.
So you maybe write a character from the UK. Well, you can't just write a generic person from the UK if you want your book to sell in the UK, because if you're from the north or the south or the east or the west or the wherever, even inside London, it depends on where you are in London, what you're going to sound like in the vocabulary and the language and the whole persona that you carry varies based even that small of a region. So when you're writing your thing and you want to say, oh, but I'm writing fantasy, I don't have a London that I'm looking at. You can use London and say, I'm going to transpose London on top of my world, and I'm going to mimic things from London. I can do that about setting, I can do that with a map or architecture or whatever, but I can do that with the personalities. And when in time, I can pull someone from, if I'm writing fantasy, I can pull someone from 1847 and 402 and 2023 and put them together in my fantasy world, and they become distinctive.
Right.
So, okay, so mannerisms, body language, facial expressions, all of those help give your character a bit more richness. What do they like? What do they hate? What kind of environment do they build around themselves? And then deeper is where we start talking about the things that really make you who you are. That's your backstory, your family and relationships, or not. Maybe you don't have any, and that is part of who you are, is that you don't build relationship for whatever reason. And then we want to know the backstory of why, and often when that's the case, that is part of the story. Trauma. So I could ask who in the room doesn't have trauma, and I would expect that no hands would go up. We all have trauma in some way. In some stories, trauma is the reason for the story. That's part of like a genre thing, is that the story is wrapped around someone's trauma and their growth through that. I've been reading a series where that is the thing. So every single book in this long series, some character in this community is overcoming whatever their thing was. And that's kind of interesting after so many. I'm like, okay, so a different trauma, cool. But even if trauma isn't central to your story, it informs how they respond in situations. And so if you kind of understand this about your person that you're writing, it helps you think about when you plop them into scene X, what are they going to do there? And when this happens, how are they going to